I've seen courtrooms turn into battlegrounds before, but not like this. Not when the judge himself is part of the crime scene. What started as a high-profile ethics case quickly spiraled into a confrontation with the very pillars of justice. Caroline Leavitt didn't just walk into that courtroom to argue law. She came to expose what the system buried. The signatures, the silence, the lies cloaked in robes. And by the time the truth surfaced, even the gavel couldn't save them. Now, let me show you how it all began. The morning sky over the U.S. District Court, Manhattan Division was a slate of cold gray, thick with the static tension of something bigger than a trial. Outside, crowds swelled against metal barricades, reporters shouting, activists waving signs that read, "Stop the show trial," and "Justice or Theater." Serena Delgado, reporting live for Veritas News, stood amid the chaos, her voice sharp through the feed. Today's proceedings may be less about justice and more about political optics. Inside, the courtroom was silent. Too silent. The doors opened, and Judge Horace Whitmore was already seated at the bench, back straight, fingers drumming a quiet beat on dark mahogany, like he'd written the final chapter before the story began. Across from him sat Assistant District Attorney Riley Quinn, composed, observant. At the defense table, Preston Kincaid leaned back casually, a faint smirk tugging at the edge of his mouth. Then Caroline Leavitt entered. Wearing a pale gray suit and holding a slim folder, she walked with measured certainty, not glancing at anyone. The room turned to ice. No one applauded. No one smiled. Caroline opened her statement. "Your Honor, we are here today to examine—" Judge Whitmore interrupted, voice cutting and dry. "Mr. Leavitt, I assume this won't be another lecture disguised as legal work." A few stifled chuckles followed. Preston glanced sideways at her, smug. Riley Quinn's brow furrowed, her silence loud with discomfort. The message was clear. Whitmore wasn't just skeptical. He was waiting to crush. Caroline didn't flinch. She inhaled slowly. Her face remained neutral, but her eyes said something else entirely. Resolve. This wasn't about pride. It was war. The lights dimmed slightly as Caroline clicked on the projector, revealing a state budget allocation chart. Numbers, dates, and red flags highlighted a nearly $3 million shortfall. "This discrepancy," she explained calmly, "suggests misuse of funds related to the Kincaid development in Manhattan." She requested the court review 2 supporting documents, an approval memo and a district spending breakdown. Judge Whitmore leaned forward, sighing dramatically. "We're not turning this courtroom into a spreadsheet convention," he said, dismissing the documents with a wave of his hand. He didn't look at them. Didn't need to. His tone made the whole presentation feel like a nuisance. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Serena Delgado's pen flew across her notebook, camera light blinking red. Outside, Court Line 24 was already live tweeting, "Leavitt's circus hits wall." On social media, a new hashtag trended. Spreadsheet trial. At the prosecution table, Riley Quinn turned to her senior and muttered, "If this keeps up, she'll have a real case," against the judge. The line hit hard, subtle but enough to plant a seed of doubt, both in the courtroom and with the audience beyond. Caroline didn't respond. No anger, no theatrics. She flipped calmly to the next document in her file and made a quiet note with her pen. Her stillness wasn't weakness, it was calculation. She wasn't here to shout, she was here to strike, and she knew the system's pressure points by heart. 2 chapters in, and already the room knew. This trial wasn't about budget lines. It was about a woman standing between corruption and collapse, and doing so with nothing but reason and unshakable will. Caroline stood slowly, almost gently, as if what she was about to reveal didn't need dramatics. It spoke for itself. From her case, she pulled a thick folder and laid it out with clinical precision. The room stilled. With the calmness of someone fully prepared, she presented a county budget authorization form, flipping to the final page and turning it outward so that even the gallery could see. A single signature, bold and unmistakable, sat beneath the approval line. Horace Whitmore. Gasps didn't erupt, but tension did. Whitmore froze, no blink, no breath. His fingers curled just slightly against the gavel, eyes locked on his own name as if it had betrayed him. Across the room, Preston Kincaid tensed, his jaw tightening in a flash of panic before masking it with a slow, deliberate adjustment of his cufflinks. He looked down, then back up, more calculating now. Riley Quinn leaned forward, her previously neutral expression shifting into something sharper, more focused. Her gaze darted from Caroline to the judge, questions unspoken now pounding at the gates of her conscience. Whitmore's voice cracked the silence, brittle and defensive. "That document is taken out of context." But it was too late. His tone lacked the edge of authority. It trembled ever so slightly, enough for everyone to hear what he was trying not to show. No one moved to back him. No one nodded in agreement. The courtroom, so quick to mock Caroline hours ago, now sat stunned, watching the once unassailable judge unravel. At the press row, Serena Delgado's fingers flew across her phone screen. Her tweet hit seconds later. Whitmore's signature just detonated the courtroom. This isn't bias, it's personal. The camera lens zoomed in not just on the signature, but on the cracks spidering across the once impervious facade of the judicial power couple. Caroline didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She closed the file carefully, aligning each page as if to mark a checkpoint. Not a victory. Her eyes flicked once, deliberately, to a black box on her table. A recording device, waiting. The silence around her wasn't hostility anymore. It was anticipation. Something irreversible had begun. Without flair, Caroline stepped forward, pulling a small recording device from her folder. She set it down on the center podium like a final chess piece. "Let's hear it in his own words," she said, her tone cool as glass. She pressed play. A voice boomed through the speakers, low and unmistakably firm. "Take care of it. I don't care how. Make sure she never sees those ledgers." The courtroom didn't gasp. It exhaled, and then forgot how to breathe again. One juror dropped a pen, the clatter sounding unnaturally loud. Kincaid stopped mid-scribble, his hands suspended in the air. Whitmore's jaw clenched. Then, in a moment that didn't look rehearsed but deeply human, his eyes fluttered closed. He didn't process. He recoiled. Caroline remained still, hands at her sides. "Justice doesn't kneel to power," she said softly, but it rang with force. "It exposes it." No one dared speak. Even the air seemed afraid to move. Whitmore straightened suddenly, his voice hissing through gritted teeth. "That recording is illegal." Caroline didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her folder again and produced a stamped document, holding it up for the court and cameras to see. "Certified, time-stamped, and admissible," she said flatly, "under authorization from the Office of Inspector General." It was done, and the courtroom knew it. At the back, Serena Delgado raised her phone mid-live stream. "History is being made at Manhattan Division Court," she said to thousands tuning in. Her lens zoomed in, not on Caroline, but on the ripple of stunned expressions, the dawning realization that the game had changed, that justice had cracked through the marble. Caroline turned slightly, her eyes catching the courtroom doors. A figure had just entered. The light behind them spilled across the floor. No name was called, no announcement needed. But something had arrived, and whatever it wasn't just the end of Whitmore's reign. It was the beginning of something else. The room hadn't fully recovered from the shock of the recording when the back doors creaked open. Every head turned. A sharp echo of leather shoes struck the courtroom floor as U.S. Marshal Eric Langley stepped in, calm, composed, and holding a folded warrant in his left hand. Judge Whitmore stiffened in his seat. He blinked once, then twice, as if the image before him might shift with time. But Langley didn't pause. "Judge Horace Whitmore," he announced, voice booming with finality, "you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to destroy evidence, and abuse of judicial power." For a beat, time froze. Whitmore's complexion drained of all color. His gavel hand twitched slightly, instinctively, but he didn't reach for it. There was nothing left to wield. A storm of murmurs rippled across the gallery. Even the press rows paused, pens lifted mid-air, fingers hovering above keyboards, as if the entire room dared not disrupt what was unfolding. 2 marshals flanked the bench. Whitmore did not resist. His hands were guided behind his back, and the moment the cold metal of the cuffs clicked shut, the courtroom exhaled. Not in relief, but in quiet awe. A soundless reckoning. The thud of the gavel never came. Instead, it was the clink of justice, finally unfiltered. Riley Quinn rose to her feet. There was no decorum left to hold. Her voice cut through the silence, resolute. "About damn time." Preston Kincaid lurched forward in panic. His words came out disjointed, frantic. "We can work this out. This doesn't have to be public." Caroline didn't even turn to look at him. She answered with surgical coldness. "If you're nervous, Mr. Kincaid, perhaps you have more to hide." Whitmore was escorted through the same doors he once entered with entitlement. The heavy door swung shut behind him, and the sound, final, deep, decisive, was more verdict than any jury could offer. No applause, no cheers, just a vacuum of sound, as if justice had spoken loudest in its purest silence. The courtroom remained still, balanced for the first time in years. Caroline turned back to the defense table, her expression untouched by triumph. Preston Kincaid sat frozen, shoulders tense, eyes darting toward the jury. His collar was damp with sweat, and his fingers twitched near a legal pad he hadn't written on for an hour. Caroline's voice cut through the tension, not harsh, not soft, just in control. "Would you like to continue this trial, Mr. Kincaid?" she asked plainly, "or discuss a plea?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then the mask crumbled. "I want protection," he stammered, the words spilling out in a half-whisper, half-plea. "I want protection." Caroline gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Then you better start talking." Outside the courtroom, the world moved quickly. Veritas News ran a special report within the hour. Serena Delgado's headline read, "System shook. Justice spoke." The footage of the recording, of Whitmore in cuffs, and of Caroline's unwavering calm went viral. Riley Quinn filed motions to audit the entire Judicial Ethics Committee. She stepped into interviews no longer as a silent assistant, but as a woman ready to restructure everything from the inside out. On Capitol Hill, Nina Park released a short video titled, "Time to Modernize." The clip showed footage of Title 42 debates, overlaid with her quiet, powerful voice. The law should protect the future, not punish it. In a packed university classroom, a young law student paused mid-lecture and scribbled 5 words onto the whiteboard in all caps. "Accountability isn't revenge, it's democracy." And somewhere, far from cameras and commentary, Caroline walked alone down the courthouse hallway. No press trailing, no congratulations offered. The light from the stained glass skylight shimmered across her face. Her eyes didn't reflect victory, they reflected resolve. A clerk passing by hesitated, uncertain if he should say something. He didn't need to. Because Caroline didn't stop, didn't glance back. She simply walked forward and spoke the final words to no one and to everyone. "This isn't revenge, this is justice. Some truths don't shout, they wait." Beneath years of silence, behind polished doors and powerful names, they wait for one moment of courage to pull them into the light. What we've seen isn't just a trial or a scandal, it's a mirror held up to a system we trust, to values we claim, to the fragile line between justice and performance. Because justice, real justice, isn't about revenge. It isn't about who wins louder or who looks stronger, it's about accountability. Quiet, precise, sometimes uncomfortable, but always necessary. It's about asking the questions no one dares, and standing in rooms no one wants to enter, simply because it's right. This story reminds us, the law was never meant to protect power. It was meant to protect people. And sometimes, it takes a single act of resistance, calm, deliberate, unshaken, to prove that truth still matters. If this journey moved you, challenged you, or made you think a little deeper, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments and let's keep this conversation going, because the fight for truth isn't over. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, follow the channel, and be the first to catch stories that don't just inform, but reveal. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice may bend, but with enough pressure, it never breaks.